I try to cover everything as fast as possible. I was very happy when Susanna suggested the title, because I said, what an amazing challenge to say something that is probably not that well known. As you heard, I wrote a book that is called A Counter History of Modern Architecture, because as yesterday Jan was talking about, even me, after my graduation, I started studying whatever it was not part of the curriculum of the School of Architecture, which was forbid, by the way, and I'm still studying. So I try to think about the fact that what today we are calling dysfunctional city is nothing more, if I'm not wrong, than what it was presented and imposed as the functional city. So it's something on which maybe we have to think about. This is a caricature I drew, and I try to use some Italian word that is universally used, which is fiasco. And these are caricature of all our nightmares, from Le Corbusier to nowadays up to Zaha Hadid, as you can see there. Because these are addicted to this modernism, which is a distorted and personal interpretation what modern means. Until the 30s, modern was something far away from what it is today. And everything is starting eventually in 1914, when Sant'Elia, who wrote the manifesto of the futurist architecture, wrote that from an architecture conceived in this way, no formal lines habit can grow, since the fundamental characteristic of futurist architecture will be its impermanence and transience. Things will endure less than us. Every generation must build its own city and going forward. And this is unfortunately what happened, because a few years later, one guy called Le Corbusier, who was not an architect, he was named architect later as a general on the field of the battles, in 1921, 1922, abandoning the idea of the scale for humans, decided to think about something for the car dimension. By the way, nobody known probably that behind Le Corbusier, it was the sponsorship of the most important car producer, Voisin, in France. So he planned the city for 3 million of inhabitants as a kind of demonstrative project, and that was his idea, and you can see that it's not far from something he did later. But in 1923, he wrote Vers une architecture, which is a kind of manifesto for the modernist movement. And of course, he was promoting always the same kind of idea. And those personal ideas later on were presented and imposed as some widespread agreement. And still today, if I try to speak in an audience of architects at the School of Architecture, I will be burned in Piazza San Pietro, maybe in Rome. In 1925, his ideas for the city of 3 million of inhabitants were transformed again in the so-called Plan Voisin. Voisin, as I told you, is the car producer in France. And the proposal was to tear down the district Marais in the center of Paris to be replaced with this marvelous example. The funny thing is that he wrote this, and when I read these things, I was imagining him like this, wearing like a Napoleon, says, from the right to the left, from west to east. Sorry, it's really invisible. Anyway, he said that it was possible to see the project. He was spending all his life studying at the problem of Paris, because, by the way, Paris is a problem. And at the end, he was really complaining against the city council, because he said, the city council has never contacted me. They call me barbarian. It seems like he was driving in the wrong direction on the highway, and he was listening at the radio. By the way, there is a crazy guy that is driving in the wrong way, and he say, just one? I'm surrounded. And 1930, 1931, things were getting worse and worse. And he conceived the Vie radieuse. The Vie radieuse is nothing more than what later on was transformed into the Addins Charter and in series of master plan. And unfortunately, after that, we will see in a series of laws all over the world. And by the way, Italy, unfortunately, was the first one that made some urban law that is still valid. And he wrote this crazy idea: a city will become part of the countryside. I will live 30 miles far from my office in one direction under pine trees. My secretary will also live 30 miles far from the office, but in the opposite direction under other pine trees. We will have our cars. We must use them until they are run out, grinding down roads, surfaces, gears, etc., because this was good. We know indeed that is good. And what happened is that in 1933, 1942, nobody probably known that, it was conceived the Addins Charter. The Addins Charter is nothing more than the result of the fourth CIAM that was that held in the August of 1933. It was St. Cruz leaving from Marseille and ending in Athens and back to Marseille. And it was a specific program on this cruise. It was the idea of promoting the functional city. How to do that? They gave to the participant 33 historical cities to be analyzed, taking as a model a 34th city. That was the plan for the new Amsterdam that was based on Le Corbusier theory, and by the way, were based on the idea of the zoning. And when you have some system that is saying that you have to separate the functions, you have to keep the school there, 30 miles, there is the house of Le Corbusier, and then there is the shopping mall somewhere else, and you compare this crazy system with the multifunctional system of the historical city, of course, the historical city is wrong. So that was the way it was conceived, the fourth CIAM. And indeed, something happened, because everybody started with the idea of following Le Corbusier's theories, but they were not probably in an agreement. This is the master plan for Amsterdam, where you can see the first example of urbanism conceived with the spots of colors instead of thinking at the form of the city. And with the separation of the function, of course, things are not going very well. It was some series of writings. You can explore more in the paper that is actually online, where you can find much more details than what I can say in this very, very short time I have. But different things were written after the meeting, because, of course, they were thinking at the different aspects of this meeting. So it was recognized the importance of the meeting, etc., and it was important that they were showing that it was a kind of a common agreement that was going to transform the way of conceiving the laws. But nevertheless, as Giorgos Simevoridis wrote in 1993, something went wrong. And this is not that well known, because the agreement was so powerful that at a certain point were three different groups that were thinking at totally different things. They took a different cruise toward the different islands, thinking at their own ideas, and then when they went back on the Patris both, it was not an agreement at all. And at that point, they started fighting. And the president of the CIAM wrote, "Without a decision, our work has no meaning. Decisions are the same as reports. Our reports are the most important things. It would be better for the Congress to risk taking the wrong decision rather than losing our way in endless analysis." In a very democratic and delicate way, Le Corbusier wrote to Gideon, who was guiding the group, said, "Listen, Gideon, I've been starting at reality for 10 years. I know what the problem is, what makes the problem uneasy, where the breaks, the weakness, and a good intention are. I know what we should aim at. It's the screen is, yeah, there are things that are going up to the other, sorry. I know what we should aim, whom we should refer to. Our fourth Congress is an event, that's all. Decisions were taken on the last day and accepted by everyone. They are objective. This is the sensible things, agreement on objective ideas. And it's ideas that we need to put in front of public opinion. This is what our Congress lives for. Otherwise, it will perish. These objective ideas will be the truth from the 1933 for everyone in all countries. We must not try to get out it. We have responsibilities. Architects await us. So do mayors and ministers, in short, people who have responsibilities. You don't hold a Congress to say empty things, but to build. The time has gone. Gideon, the word burns. There is the needs of certainties. We are the technician of modern architecture. Ask that the resolution to be published therefore isn't important. The form isn't important to me. And this was unfortunately taken completely in consideration. As I told you, the law 1150 we have in Italy is nothing more than copy and paste of the resolution published by Le Corbusier. And the Addins Charter was never published after the meeting in Athens. It was published by Le Corbusier alone only in 1942, and he presented the paper as a common agreement, but was him alone. It was no one following him. He published on behalf of the French Shia. And unfortunately, later on, Le Corbusier and Gideon realized effectively how much the Addins Charter had an influence on the laws all over the world. And by the way, maybe one of you know that a month ago, 2 months ago in Paris, were published 2 books on the dark side of Le Corbusier, with the photos of the letters he wrote to Hitler, Mussolini, and Stalin asking for a job. So we are thinking of this guy as a god, but probably was not the proper one. But what is important to think about is that in this meeting, it was present a person that was not involved in the urban design, but was there because it was the hipster of the period. That was Fernand Léger, and he was probably the most incredible wise man on board. He said, "I think that your heroic epoch has ended. The clearing up effort is over. Stop, because you are going over the limit. An elite group has followed your heroic epoch. That is normal. You have built state of the art of house for people. Instead, you want your ideas to spread. The term urban planning to overshadow the aesthetic problem. Town planning is social. You have entered in a brand new field where your pure and radical solution will have to fight. Abandon this elegant and conditioned minority. The small average man, the city dweller, in other words, is dizzy. You have created an absolutely new architectural concept. But from an urban and social viewpoint, you have gone too fast. If you want to do urban planning, I believe you must forget that you are artists. Become social. There is a skin between your aesthetic conception and accepted by minority and your urban vision that is trouble everywhere because of the masses. You don't understand it. You should have looked behind you. You would have seen that you have no followers. It is necessary that men like you carefully observe the men behind you and those at your side and who expect something. Put your maps, plan bags in your pocket. Walk down in the street, listen to them breathe, make contact, lose yourself in raw material, and walk in their dirty and dust. Unfortunately, this wise man that was considered crazy eventually was not taken in consideration because the dictatorship of Le Corbusier was too important. And by the way, not only him, the sponsor behind him, because we are always have to remember that the big battle in the 30s between architecture and buildings, it was the same one fought between artisans and industry. And unfortunately, the power of industry that it was sponsoring the magazine was too powerful, and it was no way for artisans to survive. And step by step, we are losing the quality of architecture because we cut our relationship with the craftsmanship. And now we also have the side effect of the economy. So what happened after the approval all over the world of Le Corbusier's theories? We have these beautiful cities, right? Or we have this other one, or we have this other one. And by the way, this is not only in America, because someone is thinking at the movie The Great Beauty, but Rome is also this. In the upper part, you can see the density of the historical center that is accompanied with a wonderful network of piazze and piazzetta, spaces for gathering people, for having social life. While in the lower part, you can see this worm-like building in the middle of nowhere, where you have these big, big voids, which are planned for being parking lots, and of course, you need to park the cars of the whole city of Rome there eventually. So these are empty. And the worst thing is that these kind of empty spaces, late in the evening or in the night, are the favorite places for maniacs for raping women. So this is not the city we are looking for. And actually, we have also, as I said in some venue, there is the abuse of words, green, sustainable, LEED, eco-city, etc., etc. But many times, if we pay attention to what those people are really talking about, is something that is nothing more than a new lie, which is masking again the interest of industry on buildings. Why European communities subsidizing whoever wants to put the solar panel, photovoltaic panel on the walls, on the ceiling to produce energy, and without having a program to trash those things within 15 years when these things must be trashed, and that is not subsidizing whoever is building in a traditional manner that is not consuming energy. That, I think, is much more important. But we are promoting these beautiful things because architects believe that whatever is possible to be seen on the screen of their computer is possible. So you can have a trees at the 30th floor, and I'm wondering where is the earth necessary to keep the roots. I'm waiting in Milan for the fall of the first trees over some poor people. I hope the architect who designed it. This is not the way of planning green. Green is something different. Green needs to stay on the ground, and green needs to support the underground river, which are making the water drinkable. It's not on the 4th floor, on the ceiling, or whatever you want, on the walls, like in this other one. And this is also something that is presented as sustainable. But when you have a skyscraper, all this green is not possible. You have to park a lot of cars. You have to pave the planet for having these marvelous green things, which of course on the computer is doable. Let's do it in reality. And so, is this the sustainability we want? Is a pseudo-sustainability, and eventually, even if it is sustainable because of the use of whatever device you want to produce clean energy, you have a sustainable building for unsustainable cities. The little house in the middle of nowhere, it's belonging to an unsustainable urbanism. It is necessary to think in a more holistic way and think that sustainability is something that is not something that can be approached in a punctual way. What is interesting, what is the solution? I don't want to say that I have, you know, I'm the new Le Corbusier that has the verb. You know, I think we need to be modest, and we have to watch back, as that guy was saying, and we can discover that our archives all over in the old world are plenty of documents that are dating back up to the Roman time, because in the 5th century AD, Giuliano of Ascalon wrote some urban code which was repeating what it was written in the ancient Roman codes. And these things written in the Giuliano of Ascalon were later on taken by a series of Arabic writers. There is one missing. Ibn al-Dinar. We have documents that are going up to the 14th century. And then in the 15th century, the beginning of the 15th century, we believe that there is the Renaissance. But in reality, the idea of the city is something that is starting much earlier with the communal period in the 12th, 13th century. The idea of the piazza, Suzanne shown the Piazza del Campo in Siena, is something that is dating back to the 12th century with some incredible high concept. But this high concept is nothing more than the fact that we exported in the Middle East a series of things, and then with the Byzantine and Arab domination, those things came back to Italy. So it was never, probably we have no written codes until the 12th century, when we have the codes of Siena, the codes of Orvieto, and all the other codes. We just need to restart from there. Also because those things are still readable. If we have some little knowledge of the civic code, for instance, in Italy, we find exactly the same things written in the Arabic treaties. So what is this? It's something that is showing that we are coming from the same roots. And I reported these things in the book, The Sustainable City is Possible. And now we have to think about that eventually, instead of thinking at the future, we can just watch at the back and see what was the way of designing city, the way of designing buildings before the advent of modernism, before the imposition of Le Corbusier's theories. And I use these things, so these are courtyard of social housing in Rome, built in the 20s, which are extremely pleasant, and believe it or not, as I told you, are social housing. And you can see kids that are still playing in the playground area, in the courtyards there. And so, as I said, we can just need to recover. Now, because even yesterday, Ian was saying, you know, someone asked him to show models. You know, I can speak, but I need to expose myself and show you what is possible to do if we just recover those things. So very, very quickly, because I have only 7 minutes, I'm going to show you 2 examples of 2 projects I developed for the urban regeneration of 2 districts in Rome, and then very quickly also 2 projects developed by my students at the University of Notre Dame, because we have always to remember that every problem eventually starting in the schools of architecture, because if we teach in a wrong way, our students are believing in the professor as a god. And if gods are like Le Corbusier, probably they are believing in the wrong god. Oops. So this is the monster district Corviale, 1 kilometer long building built of course by a professor of La Sapienza. And you can see the beauty, of course, is the idea of l'unité d'habitation. How we can substitute this? Thanks to the wrong laws we plan in the 20th century, we have city plenty of voids. Just using these voids that are belonging to public property, we have no cost for public land, for public buildings. So we can start filling. So this is what we have today. We can build a series of houses in the voids. When these houses are ready, we can move people instead of evicting them before doing. And step by step, we can arrive to a borgo. The borgo is not enough. The city is 3-dimensional, is 4-dimensional, because we have to include the time. So it's necessary to plan a series of spaces. These are the pedestrian piazze, streets, but the pedestrian area are extended with the use of the internal courtyards. The vehicular circulation, you can see in green, in red, the vehicular circulation, main vehicular circulation; in brown, the local circulation, garage, underground. The orange dark are on the level of the ground. The shops and the workshops along the streets, the green spaces, different kind of green spaces, but the city is something that is an organism made of different organs, and so you need to have both the res publica, the public buildings, and the res economica. So these are all the public building, the school, the schools, all the schools, the market, the church, the movie theater, the town hall, the bank, etc. And these are the houses, and only when you have the sovereign position of the res publica and res economica, you can have the civitas. Then I made an evaluation of the cubic meter to be built and the evaluation of the cubic meter of a private building to be built. In order to make an estimation, I'm not going to show you this, but there are the papers. In 2012, I presented this paper where you can learn more about this. And the interesting thing is that the present land consumption of the present Corviale is roughly 30 hectares, and there are 6,500 inhabitants. With my proposal, it's possible to room 8,530 inhabitants, and it is also possible to give back to the countryside almost 11 hectares. This is a view that is showing what could be the main piazza from the town hall toward the elementary and preschool. This is the view on the opposite direction. You can also see in the courtyard of this building the area for the kids, for the elder, for playing, being controlled from the windows if they want to control, but of course out of the traffic. This is another view of another lot. This is a view that is showing in the center of the space the loggia of the market and the two piazze. This is at the street level approaching the market loggia. This is on the other side in the piazza of the church. This is a block on the edge of the intervention. This is the view toward the movie theater. What is interesting is that the cost-benefit analysis shows that thanks to the mixed income, thanks to the mixed use, it's possible to sell all what we don't need for social housing. That means that we can have the mixed income and we can have profit instead of cost for public, because we have at the end 511 millions that are remaining for public. The same thing happened for the district Palermo, in Palermo, the Zen, which is a monster jail district, which is the worst one. Look at this Sing Sing looks like building. And this is the beautiful aspect of this space, again designed by the most important professor of the University in Milan, Vittorio Gregotti, also the director of Casabella, the very important magazine. So no one wants to talk about this because it's built by the most incredible architect, but you can see this building was finished in the 90s. They have a skin disease already. And so if we study the local lexicon of Palermo, we learn that there are balconies which are not there, of course, in the Zen by Gregotti. There are many different interesting elements that are belonging to the local tradition. We have to develop the sense of belonging of people, but developing the sense of belonging, we also develop the local craftsmanship. That means that we can develop the local economy because it's everything based on local. This was the roads near on the site of the Zen before the intervention. This is what we have today with this centralized plan, which is completely fenced off. You know, it's a kind of jail to keep these people away from the rest of the city. And this is the plan that looks like this space monster game of the 70s. Maybe that was the inspiration. And also in this case, it's possible to do the same process of Corviale. Filling the empty spaces is possible step by step to arrive to some district, which is for 21,000 and something inhabitants. So this is what is today, and this is it would be. You can see also the permeability, the appearance of roads that are not there. Indeed, this is what we have today with this jail, and then here you can see how you can have permeability, recreating the access that were locked by this intervention. This is the vehicular circulation. This is the pedestrian circulation. This is the mobility of public transportation. These are the parking lot under the ground on the ground level. This is the system of the pedestrian spaces, the piazze. Again, the piazza with the extension within the courtyard for these spaces for everybody. This is something that is giving the sense of the so-called 10-minute walk. But when we are talking about 10-minute walk, eventually we have to consider that within these 10 minutes you can be really, really tired if the city is boring. You have to eventually think that the city is fourth dimensional in order to create a rhythm inside that is breaking the walk and is at the end making the walk interesting. So I measure also in terms of time the main decumanus, the main cardo, the other cardo, which is the one where we are going to have the farm market. But then I measured in terms of time also the distance among all the piazza and small piazza I propose. Every 2 minutes you can have a piazza or piazzetta that is making the walk interesting. Then I made estimation about the surface. I have to go faster. In yellow you can see the spaces where we can have a area for the kids for playing. In brown you can see the places where you can have spaces for elder for their time. These are the disposition of the different schools, dimension of the Italian standards. These are the sport areas. These are in detail the sport area, the southern sport area and the northern. I was asked, this is a participatory program, so I was asked by the people there, since this is the worst district for the mafia to find their workers. The inhabitants asked to increase as much as possible the sport area because these things can keep away from criminality these young kids. So this is the map of the ground floor with the shop front, the commercial area and the workshops. This is the extension of the farm market, typical of Palermo. This is the Civitas. These are all the public buildings, as you can see, are widespread, are not all concentrated like in the zoning, the area of something somewhere. We need to have this because the public building, the emerging building are justifying the presence of the piazze. This is the res economicas again, and this is the Civitas. I made an evaluation also in this case of the cubic meters to be demolished, the cubic meter to be built, and also how many inhabitants we can have. These are example of dimensioning of the streets, depending. But also in this case, we have profit instead of having costs. We have 117 millions of euro of profit. And every year, just from the rent for low income, it is possible to gain 8,064,000 euro, which is something that could be used for whatever kind of reason. This is the present beautiful piazza in front of the church. This is what could be. This is the market piazza from the ground level. This is from an aerial view. But then, as I told you, this is something I did, but I'd like to show you also what young people within a very, very short time can do if are well-guided, but not well-guided because they are free. They have just to apply what they learn when they are visiting the places. So this is a project we did for Rome for replacing a military barrack to find a way to cover the cost for the construction of some system of mobility that was planned 25 years ago and never implemented because it was too expensive. So I shown just using this military barrack, abandoned military barrack, it's possible to replace with a nice district that is respecting the character of the district Appio Latino and stitch together the Appio Latino, which actually are separated by this sunken, partially abandoned railway. And these are just a few drawings made by my student. As you can see, these are images that are showing a kind of walk through the urban sequences they are planning. And this year, with my graduate, we did also a project for Rimini, a very quick project to stitch together the historical part of the city and the sea, which is cut off because of the presence of the railway, and also to solve a series of problems they have today with the farm market that they want to evict from the center, etc. I can go to, but this is the master plan they did. And it was also a series of walking through images that are showing. And this is the underground passage under the railway. Instead of having some dangerous underground passage like the one they can have the extension of the market area under the ground with this kind of tunnel that looks like the Moscow subway, let's say, where you can have activity. So instead of having the shopping mall in the middle of nowhere, you can have in the hub of the city, this kind of activity. Then when you leave this underground passage, you get to the Piazza of the Market, which is a piazza that could be used during the day with the vendors, and during the night they close, the market is disappearing and appearing the table, like you can see in Rome in Campo dei Fiori, or in Verona in Piazza delle Erbe, Piazza dei Signori. And this is another sequence of the same project that is showing the flow through the city. Thank you.